The House will please come to order. I'd like to welcome everyone to the 14th day of the session, Thursday, February 29th, 2024. Reading clerk, call the roll.
Convening roll for the 14th day, February 29th, 2024. Allemand. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Excused. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Clauston. Conrad. Excused. Crago. Excused. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Excused. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Excused. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Excused. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez-Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stith. Storer. Excused. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washit. Western. Excused. Winter. Wiley. Ian. Swanitzer Dan. Swanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers.
Here.
You want to close it or you want to leave it open?
No. Reading clerk, let's leave that. There's a few people here now. Why don't we pick those up that are here now?
Fair. Here. Excused. Here. Conrad. Crago. Here. Excused. Here. Locke.
Present.
Excused to here. Nicholas. Here. Excused. Here. Oakley. Nope. Storer. Western. Excused to here.
All right, reading clerk, let's leave that open for just a little bit longer. Today, our prayer of the day will be provided by Reverend Todd Scranton from First Methodist Church of Cheyenne. This is his last day, so let's give him a round of applause for being here.
Thank you, and please be in an attitude of prayer with me. Holy One, I ask for your blessing on the men and women gathered in this place. Give them a renewed sense of purpose as they meet the responsibilities that you and the people of Wyoming have entrusted to them. Allow your Spirit to guide them forward. May they walk with intention, but also in humility, with an honest knowledge of their strengths and weaknesses, along with a healthy sense of the unique gifts of those that are present in those around them. Guard them against the temptation to always be right, and allow them to listen as carefully and as intentionally as when they to others as when they formulate their own opinions. Most of all, help them and all of us in this divided time to move forward with patience, bearing with one another in love, respect, and forbearance as we confront the challenges ahead. Give us faith that with you to guide and strengthen us, we can accomplish the work you have called us to do, and know that in doing so, we have served you well. We offer this prayer in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend, for those words. Those were very good words. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It was nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
The House will please come to order. Get everybody in their seat. We do have some privileges today, and I'm going to start with Representative Larson Lloyd.
Mr. Chairman, members of the House, I'm, really privileged to be able to introduce a person in the state that really is focused on moving the state forward and has led by example with compassion and kindness. It's my privilege and honor to have First Lady Jenny Gordon here with us, and we'd ask her to stand and welcome her to the House.
Chairman Zwanitzer,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege.
please.
We're being joined today by WYAC, the Wyoming Youth Advisory Council. This is a group of our young adults who have aged out of the foster care system. They'll be working on, I think, some legislation over the next year with some of our committees, but they're here today to watch the process. They'll be joining us for lunch as well. They are all in the North Gallery surrounding the First Lady, who is touring them around this morning as well. So if you'd make them feel welcome.
Hey! Welcome to the House. Let's see, Representative Harrelson,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor.
please.
Thank you. Up in our, it'd be our West Gallery. We need signs on here, you guys. I'm just saying. In our West Gallery, we've got a family, the Spring family. They're constituents of mine and small business owners. They run a meat packing and processing plant there in Chugwater, Wyoming. And they're just amazing folk that really just love our state and love the way of life in this state. So, the Spring family.
Welcome to the House. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you have a privilege?
Privilege of the floor, Mr. Speaker.
Please.
Just like to have everybody take note in your South Gallery. We have a very, very amazing group of men and women here today with us, and I want to read a little something to you about who they are. They are the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police who are here at their spring legislative leadership meeting, and I want to give a shout out to these men and women that are spending their time and giving their lives to protect us and to provide the freedoms that we so richly enjoy in this state. And I also want to recognize personally that my sheriff, Sheriff Jeff Hodge, is the current serving president of this association from Crook County, Sundance, Wyoming. So it's an honor to be able to recognize him and his efforts, and all of these ladies and gentlemen that are so valuable and vital to this state and the protections of our rights and our privileges. So if we could please recognize these men and women, let's give them a hand.
Hey, hey! Sheriffs and chiefs, thank you so much for what you do in Wyoming to protect us, and welcome to the House. And now we'll have our Chairman Washut do some introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor.
Please.
This morning, it is my distinct honor to introduce to you our page of the day, my granddaughter, Grace, who comes to us from Lander. She's a 7th grader, does all sorts of things to keep herself busy, but mostly she smiles and is kind to people. So I'm very, very glad to have my granddaughter Grace with us this morning, and please make her feel welcome.
Hey!
And with her today is her proud father, Kyle, who's up here in the balcony. He's the president of Wyoming Catholic College in Lander, and we're glad to have him with us. And Kyle.
Washits, welcome to the house. It's good to have you here. Does anybody else have a privilege? If not, journal committee, or we still got a few, yeah, let's finish the roll call.
Conrad, here. Oakley. Storer. 62 present.
All right. Once our reading clerk gets sat down, we'll do the journal committee report.
Your journal committee reports that the journal of February 28th, 2024 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Chestick and Ward.
Do we have any messages from the Senate? It's on my list, but that doesn't mean it exists right now. Nope. All right. We're at that order of business of signing enrolled acts. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 14 being original House Bill 14, an act relating to the insurance code requiring health insurers and contracted utilization review entities to follow prior authorization regulations as specified, providing definitions, requiring rulemaking, and providing for an effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign enrolled act number 14, being original House Bill 14. I have so signed. Our nurse of the day today is Jennifer Gable from Cheyenne Regional Medical Center. I don't know if she's on this side right now. Oh, yes, very good. Please, if she is here, even if she's not, let's give her a hand anyway. Okay, we're at that order of business of Senate files on first reading. The first Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 105. The reading clerk will read the Senate file.
Senate File 105, sponsored by Senator Larson Dan.
First reading of the bill.
Wyoming Second Amendment Financial Privacy Act.
Senate File 105 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 128.
Senate File 128, sponsored by Senator Doc Stater.
First reading of the bill.
Approval of charter school.
Senate File 128 is referred to Committee Number 4, Education. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 107.
Senate File 107, sponsored by Senator Landon.
First reading of the bill.
E-cigarette and vapor material directory.
Senate File 107 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 120.
Senate File 120, sponsored by Senator Bouchard.
First reading of the bill.
Driver's licenses, unauthorized alien restrictions.
Senate File 120 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 80.
Senate File 80, sponsored by Senator Barlow.
First reading of the bill.
Solid waste management definition amendments.
Senate File 80 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 97.
Senate File 97, sponsored by Senator Hutchings.
First reading of the bill.
Prohibition on distribution of unsolicited ballot forms.
Senate File 97 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 114.
Senate File 114, sponsored by Senator Rothfuss.
First reading of the bill.
Contractor licenses, reciprocal recognition requirements.
Senate File 114 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 99.
Senate File 99, sponsored by Senator Bouchard.
First reading of the bill.
Chloe's Law, Children Gender Change Prohibition.
Senate File 99 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Representative Walters, maybe that motion would be in order now to lay that bill back. Yeah, let's just do it now. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to House Rule 7-3, I ask to have Senate File 70 laid back for one additional day.
Without objection, Senate File 70 is laid back one day. We are at that order of business of bills on second reading. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 12. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 12, sponsored by Agriculture, Meat Processing Plants, Hides, and Carcasses.
Senate File 12, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 18.
Senate File 18, sponsored by Tribal Relations, Indian Child Welfare Act, Safe Haven Amendments.
We have an amendment. Let me see. Representative Hornock, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading Amendment Number 1 to House Bill or Senate File 18 and ask for your favorable consideration. We discussed this yesterday. It's about when a baby gets dropped off at a safe haven location. There's a certain amount of protection in the person's information, or there can be. And so what this amendment does is it doesn't change the fact that the safe haven provider will still be able to will still be required to ask if the child has any Native American or Indian ancestry, but they will also say that they will also make the person dropping off the child aware that they don't need to answer that question. So it's just as simple as, hey, listen, I need to ask you a question you don't have to answer, but I need to ask you if this child has any Native American ancestry. So anyway, that's the amendment. It just adds that language. I'd appreciate your.
Representative Stith for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, just a question for the bringer of the amendment. The State Indian Child Welfare Act is a duplicate, essentially, of the Federal Indian Child Welfare Act. Excuse me. So the question is, does this amendment in any way create a conflict with the Federal Indian Child Welfare Act? I don't have reason to believe that it does, but that's just an issue that occurred. Just thought I'd ask the bringer.
Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would suggest to you that it does not impact the Federal Indian Child Welfare Act at all because it doesn't contemplate the Safe Haven Act. And as we talked yesterday, we talked about two kind of competing acts, the Indian Child Welfare Act and the Safe Haven Act, which we're trying to allow the autonomy that comes with the Safe Haven Act and the requirements that come in with allowing tribes and descendants of tribal descent to maintain that affiliation. I think this bill or this amendment helps thread that just a little finer and provide for a little more autonomy, but still keeping in place the requirement to make the inquiry if there is tribal affiliation or Native ancestry. And so I think that I think it's a good amendment.
Anybody else for their first time? Second time before the sponsor? Sponsor good, or you want to go? Question being called. All those in favor of second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 18 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 18 has been adopted. Senate File 18 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 37.
Senate File 37, sponsored by Tribal. Indian Child Welfare Act Delinquency Amendments.
Senate File 37 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 38.
Senate File 38, sponsored by Management Audit. Financial Reporting Amendments 2.
Senate File 38 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 45.
Senate File 45, sponsored by Senator Nethercott. Vulnerable Adult Civil Cause of Action 2.
Senate File 45 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 47.
Senate File 47, sponsored by Appropriations. Law Enforcement Retirement Contributions.
We have an amendment. Second reading amendment number 1, Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 47. So folks, obviously this language looks very familiar, and there's a reason for that. It was in the budget bill, an amendment that I brought forth. The reason I'm bringing this here, because it was in the budget bill, and obviously there's some concern amongst members of both chambers that how things exactly will shake out in budget negotiations. And because there was not a mirror amendment on the other end, there's no guarantee that that amendment will stay in there. So I would say that this amendment has an insurance policy. The verbiage is not identical, but it's very close. And again, we can walk through it. Who was killed in the line of duty on or after January 1 shall, notwithstanding paragraph I of the subsection, receive a monthly death benefit payment of 90% of the officer's salary plus 6% of that salary for each child under the age of 18. Obviously, a few weeks ago we had a very tragic situation here. I think this amendment gives the spouse of that fallen officer the goodwill and faith and the assurance of the state. So, and Mr. Chairman, pursuant to Rule 12-4, I'd like to call for the ayes and noes on this amendment.
Are there seconds? Representative Bear, were you headed to the mic? Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a question for the bringer of the amendment. This does appear to be very identical to the amendment that was put on the budget. My understanding is the amendment in the budget would end in 2 years when the budget ends. So my question is, would this go on? Is this a policy decision similar to what we made in the budget, but longer lasting?
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the sponsor? Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the question, yes, this is going in the Green Book. So, unless a future legislative body comes back and repeal this is in perpetuity. So I would ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
All right. Second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 47. Chief Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Allemand? Allemand?
Excuse, sorry.
Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund?
Excuse.
Harrelson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Luck, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Nemec, Northrup, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Pendergraft, Penn, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Sherwood, Singh, Slagle, Smith, Stiff, Storer, Strzok, Stivar, Tarver, Trujillo, Walters, Ward, Washut, Western, Winter, Wiley, Yin, Zwanitzer Dan, Zwanitzer Dave, Speaker Summers. Eklund. Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 excused.
Second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 47 has been adopted. Senate File 47 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Speaker, privilege.
Please.
It gives me great pleasure to introduce the third through sixth grade students from my home community of Albin. These are the Albin Wildcats. They've been here before, and I recognized them for an award that they won. It's a National Distinguished Award, and it's happened 3 times. And so their academics and their scholarship has been outstanding, and I'd first like to, I'll have a little more afterwards, but we can welcome them to the House if you would.
Hear, hear.
Their head teacher is Christina Nussbaum, and teachers Brittany Weekly-Sticklin and Deborah Mueller are here as well with them. Something that I don't think I mentioned when, with the recognition, you have outstanding teachers, you have outstanding students, and while I was growing up, while my kids were growing up, it was always said that it's a triangle. That makes education work, the student, the teacher, and the parents. And this school has about 100% participation in the parent-teacher conferences, and I think that's a huge part of why it's such a successful school and such a successful program. I'd also like to recognize one of my favorite farmhands is up there, Fletcher Hansen, my grandson. So, thank you, kids.
Welcome to the House. It's great to have you students here. It's awesome. What a wonderful group to have that kind of award. You ought to be proud. Your teachers ought to be proud. Very nice. Good job. So the next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 48.
Senate File 48, sponsored by Appropriations, Patrol, Warden, and Investigator Retirement Contributions.
Senate File 48, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 49.
Senate File 49, sponsored by Appropriations, Judicial Retirement Program Contributions.
Senate File 49, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 55.
Senate File 55, sponsored by Revenue, Board of Equalization. Questions before the board.
Senate File 55, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 58.
Senate File 58, sponsored by Appropriations, Investment of State Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund.
Senate File 58, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 59.
Senate File 59, sponsored by Appropriations, Federal Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund Adjustment.
Senate File 59, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 60.
Senate File 60, sponsored by Select Federal Natural Resource Management, 2024 Large Project Funding.
Senate File 60, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 67.
Senate File 67, sponsored by Appropriations, Public Employee Retirement Plan Contributions.
Senate File 67, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 81.
Senate File 81, sponsored by Senator Baldwin, Hospital or Healthcare District Created Entities, Immunity.
Senate File 81, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. We're at that order of business of bills on third reading and final passage. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the consent list consisting of the following Senate files: Senate File 5, Senate File 21, and Senate File 35.
Would anyone like to remove any of these bills from the consent list? Will the reading clerk please read the bills on the consent list?
Senate File 5, sponsored by Labor, Organ Transplant Recipient Protection, an act relating to insurance, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 21, sponsored by Corporations, Public Utilities Net Power Cost Sharing Ratio, an act relating to public utilities, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 35, sponsored by Judiciary, Public Records, DOC Investigations, an act relating to public records, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Having been read three separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the House? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Berger.
Excused.
Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Clauston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez-Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Slagle. Smith. Stith. Storer. Strzok. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanitzer Dan. Zwanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Berger. Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 62 aye. As for Senate File 5, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 62 aye. As for Senate File 21, are there any changes? Stivar, aye to no. Slagle, aye to no. Smith, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 59 aye, 3 no. As for Senate File 35, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 62 aye.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate Files 5, Senate File 21, and Senate File 35 have passed the House. We're at that order of business of bills on third reading and final passage, the regular list. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 9.
Senate File 9, sponsored by Education, Parental Rights in Education 1, an act relating to education, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have amendments. Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 9 and ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we had very good discussion here, and I worked very, very close with a lot of the people that are very, very supportive of this bill, and I'm supportive of this bill as well. But what you have before you is really just trying to make sure that our school nurses know what they can and cannot do, and they do not have to have expressed consent for these. And actually what this will end up doing is for the 4 items listed, and it's down on lines 9 and 10, it's for audiology, vision, scoliosis, and body mass index assessments. What we're doing is we're actually creating a definition for a health screening tool. And then what we're saying is anything outside of these 4 federally regulated assessments that are out there, these are the ones that we need to make sure that these are opt-out. Everything else should be an opt-in process. And you know, I worked hard with the good nurse practitioner in the body, as well as the school nurses across the state. I'm sure your guys' inbox has been flooded just as much as mine. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'd stand for any questions.
Representative Penn for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As was just stated, I think that this is a good attempt to try to shorten some of the things up that some of our public school nurses have had concerns about. And so I would ask for your aye vote.
All right, anybody else for their first time? Second time? Question being called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 9 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Third reading amendment number 1 has been adopted. The next amendment for our consideration is third reading amendment number 2, Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 9. Ask for your favorable introduction. What this does, ladies and gentlemen, is go through the bill when it talks about notification of your child's mental, physical, or emotional health. It just adds the word negative changes. So I certainly don't need my kid's school to call me to tell me my kid's having a good day. But if there is a consequence and something is showing up at school, I think it's important that they call and let me know. Otherwise, my district has an app that I get 4 messages a day from, and I don't need any more. So I think that's the intent of the bill and would encourage your positive vote on the change.
Representative Lawley for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against this amendment, the word negative and positive are completely subjective. What someone in the school may find as a positive, a parent may view as negative. And so I think that makes this very unworkable. So I'm, again, think that we shouldn't distinguish. I think we should just report changes and let the parent determine whether they're negative or positive and what they should be doing. I have, of course, a special needs grandchild, and often what seems negative or positive to those at school, based on what is happening in the background with parents, it may be actually a positive development for the situation the parents are dealing with. So again, I just don't think this is helpful. I appreciate the bringer, but I am on and against.
Representative Penn for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would encourage a no vote on this. As was just said, I think we get into the land of subjectivity again. which we've been trying to get away from. Also, given where this is found in here, it says that schools shall not adopt a policy that would prohibit a parent, the school from contacting and discussing these things. And so I don't see an issue where we have a policy prohibiting our teachers and nurses and things from relaying positive information. So I think it's unnecessary and leads to more subjectivity. So I'd ask for your nay vote. Thank you.
Anybody else for their first time, second time before the sponsor? Chairman Zwanitzer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I would tell you that mental and emotional health are already subjective, and that this whole point of the bill is that, we can complain and initiate lawsuits against a school district if they don't do exactly what we ask. And so I don't want any more lawsuits by saying, hey, my kid actually is doing better and you didn't notify me. My kid started out in a bad mood this month. The whole bill is subjective, and you're putting our school districts in a really difficult position on having to pass certain rules that conform to whatever, I guess, ideological wishes this body keeps trying to get them to move towards. I don't think it's a detrimental, I just think it's a nice cleanup, that what we're really asking is if something's going wrong at school, parents get notified. Parents don't need to get notified left and right of any change in behavioral, emotional, mental health. Moody teenagers change every hour, and I'm not sure it's a good idea to have to, document every one of those changes and report every one of those changes to the parents. At some point, it gets to be overwhelming. So I know the intent of the bill. I'm just making sure, we don't overburden our school districts anymore with anything unnecessary.
All those in favor of third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 9 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 2 has failed. The next amendment for our consideration is third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 9. Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 9 and ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, I was going to put this all into one amendment, and I just screwed up, to be honest with you. But after also working with the same sponsors for the bill and kind of some of the stuff that we were talking about, again, making sure that our school nurses feel heard and feel safe in the practice of this law. What you will see is we are adding the term routine to this bill. And what that does is that really puts in practice that if a kid comes in and has a bloody nose, that's a pretty routine practice and a pretty routine assessment. We don't need to be going through and having a diagnostic list of 700 pages of things that could potentially happen and having a parent have to figure out which ones they want and do not want their child to be subjected to. So for the purposes of this bill, what we're trying to do, we're not trying to scare school nurses and frighten them. We're trying to make sure that parents have their rights, and we're trying to make sure that when it comes down to effects of their children in the school, they're taken care of. Routine visits to the nurse's office, we don't need to be scaring our nurses with this. Again, worked with the same people on this one and came to a good compromise. So would ask for an aye vote.
Anybody else for their first time? All right, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 9 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 3 has been adopted. Third reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 9. Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move third reading amendment number 4 to Senate File number 9 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members of the chamber, we have been watching this and working very hard on this bill. And in my part of the state, they are watching this bill very closely. I know of 50 families plus that are watching how this is progressing through our chamber because they have a vested interest in the outcome. So they approached me last night about some wordsmithing, a couple of ideas that they would like to have added to strengthen the bill. And it centers around two separate issues. One of them is to include educational on the things that should be notified in not only physical, mental, and emotional health, but if there's a significant change in their educational health. when one of my children, one of my daughters was in middle school, we noticed a drop in her academics, and through that, we were able to identify another issue that we could resolve. Actually, it was because she was ostracized because she didn't have a blue coat, and her other friends all had blue coats, and she wanted a blue coat, and her parents wouldn't buy her a blue coat to be in the blue coat club. But that's how we noticed it, is a drop in her academics. And so this is one of the early warning signs that parents need to be aware of, that there may be underlying issues to resolve. And the other one is on page 3, where it says not adopt or implement any. We want to insert formal or informal rules or policies or practices. And the reason is schools have their policy manual, section 10-4 or whatever it is, the policies of the school. But then things may come up and they get emails. And usually those emails start off with, we have recognized, or because of this situation, we want you to do this. So those are informal policy, but it's in an email rather than the policy book. So by putting those words in there, any formal or informal rules or policies or practices, that encompasses those emails that these employees of the school district may receive to direct them in various instances and practices. So stand for any questions and ask for your favorable consideration.
Representative Penn for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would also ask for your aye vote. I think that this is a great attempt to further shore up what we're trying to achieve with the intent of this bill, addresses a few of the concerns that parents have had, and so please vote aye.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just used the old internet machine here trying to figure out what educational health is. I've been serving on the Education Committee for 8 years now, and I've never heard that term used. I understand what we're trying to do. I understand the principle of what we're attempting to get to. I'm concerned about that terminology and that going into the green books on what we're actually going to implement here. I wish this wasn't coming on third reading and we had a little bit more time to maybe wordsmith this. If I can get maybe a definition that's out there, something that's used, something a little bit more concrete, I would feel a lot more comfortable. I certainly like the formal and informal. I think that's a good catch. So just maybe if we can get that answer, it'd be helpful. Thanks.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time, first time? Chairman Northrup?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was just quickly reading through because, once again, I was in committee and didn't have a chance to get through this. On page 2, line 18, if I'm reading this correctly, it says not prohibit parents or guardians from accessing any of their students' education records that are created, because we dropped out health. Is that really the intent? You don't want to know about your child's health?
Anybody else for their first time? Second time before the sponsor? Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To start with the last question on page 2, line 18, what we removed was education and health. So what it reads is not prohibit parents or guardians from accessing any of their students' records created, maintained, or used by the school district. We know that there's a lot of records out there that may be good information for a parent. And so this allows the parents to be able to see what's happening with their students as the parents get more and more involved in their students' education. And as far as educational health, that's academics, and whether they're doing well in school from an academic perspective. We know emotional, mental health, physical health, all is interrelated with the way they do in education. So it just all-encompassing gives them an opportunity for those early indicators to be able to identify an issue that they can work on and identify and work and help their students as early as possible. Again, I urge an aye vote on this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All those in favor of third reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 9 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Third reading amendment number 4 has been adopted. Third reading amendment number 5, Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I move House Third Amendment reading number 5 to House or Senate File number 9 and ask for your favorable consideration. So this is one more attempt to address concerns that parents have about what children are being taught. The intent of this bill is that we are having that communication between parents and teachers to ensure that they understand what's happening with the education of their kids. And so this says that, parents, or excuse me, teachers can send out a notice or information whenever they so choose, but they have to receive confirmation back within a day prior to this subject matter being taught that says, yep, I want you to teach that to my kid. I would ask for a favorable vote.
Anybody for their first time? Chairman Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the bringer, just a question of what that would look like, an individual email, an individual text, a posting on a website. I'm unclear what that would look like and what permission would look like. Would there be a text back, an email back? I'm just unclear in practical terms how this works. Thank you.
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just some questions, because when I think when people use the term sexual orientation or gender identity, they're thinking of a certain ideology in their mind, but being heterosexual is in fact a sexual orientation, right? So anytime you want to talk about parenting or marriage or, adulting, and I understand where we're getting at, but I just want to make sure the bringer of the amendment is fully aware that, I guess this goes to any type of sexual education and any kind of health or PE course. And I think we all received this, at least in our school district, in 5th grade, and I know they did check with parents to make sure that's coming, but I'm hoping it means there's just a waiver at the beginning of the school year for most districts that would say it's okay to teach these things, because I think in an everyday normal educational system, at least for high school, these things come up automatically, right? When talking about men and women and straight couples who engage in activities of daily living, whether that's home ec. It seems so broad. I know what they're getting at, but I just want to make sure they're not putting something on our school district that is unworkable and it goes far beyond what they're thinking this amendment does.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Harrells? Anybody for their second time before the sponsor? Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I think that this can look like a lot of things, and a lot of this can be handled in rules and regulations and how are we going to work this, but it shouldn't be difficult. This simply says that written or electronic permission. So if a teacher is going to be teaching this content, and if there's going to be conversations, that they have the foresight. They say, I know I'm going to be teaching this topic. Therefore, if it's going to potentially touch on these issues, parents need to be involved. Parents need to be involved in anything that may be coming up if a teacher is planning on teaching this content. And so they need to be, that's where we're talking about. We want to have this close communication between our the schools and parents. That's the point of this. And so, yes, it does create some issues, but it also puts in the minds of teachers, where do we need to be extra careful? And I think that this is a positive thing. They can simply text a teacher, in my opinion, and again, that can be handled in the rules and regulations. So please vote aye.
All those in favor of third reading amendment number 5 to Senate File 9 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Third reading amendment number 5 has been adopted. The next amendment for our consideration is third reading amendment number 6 to Senate File 9. Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 6 to Senate File 9 and ask for your favorable consideration. I had a conversation with one of my constituents when they were looking at this, and they said, well, there's no option for civil action. And I said, well, there is. I mean, it's definitely, that's implied. I mean, that's in the green books, you can do that. And they said, why is it that our statutes are always so confusing? I mean, I'm reading this and I don't see that. And so this is bringing together and making it very clear. So on line 7, page 6, after may, it'll insert these words. So it'll read out, of this subsection may file civil action or seek judicial review pursuant to Wyoming Statute 16-3-114. It just gives them that opportunity, hey, this is already in the books, this is what you can do, but it gives them the opportunity to see that they can, this is a course of action that is available for them and to them, and would ask for your favorable consideration.
Representative Stiff.
Mr. Speaker, on and against this amendment, we faced this issue last week in discussing a similar bill. Again, do you want to create a cottage industry for lawyers? Do you want to create a lot of litigation? Right? The issue here is we're talking about money damages, and basically the taxpayers end up having to pay for this. So please vote no.
Anybody else for their first time? Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Can you just have the bringer tell us what 21-3-135 is and discuss that section of law? Thanks.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I would respond to the second two speakers ago. What's parental rights worth? What's it worth for you to be able to violate a parent's right? So on and for the amendment.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their Representative Western for your first time?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if I understand this correctly, this is talking about the ability to sue for damages. I was hoping that maybe the sponsor of this amendment can elaborate on what those damages are in a pecuniary sense. I mean, I can understand if they're out hundreds of thousands of dollars, their house has been taken away from them, their car's been taken away from them, those kind of damages that are really easy to quantify. But in this kind of scenario, could you walk me through a most likely type of situation where those damages are, how do we quantify them and what they are from a monetary perspective? Thank you.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I don't really care whether we pass this particular amendment, but I understand where they're trying to come from. But if I can actually get confirmation that we already allow this, I would feel more comfortable with adopting this amendment to make the people feel comfortable about this. To my knowledge, I don't believe we actually have that authority, and I think it may be being sold as a little bit of a different story that we're now adding that we can file a civil action against this. That was not discussed during the interim, ladies and gentlemen. That's one of the big things. This is a joint education bill. We discussed it and we soundly defeated it. This is not a bill that we're trying to win money out of. We're not trying to default and bankrupt our education system because of a particular piece of information being withheld from a parent. And I think we're starting to tread on very, very dangerous waters if we start adopting language like this, when we start saying our school boards are going to be civilly liable in the court of law for damages. What do those damages look like? Did you withhold the fact that my child had a bloody nose? Well, I was supposed to know about that, and now I'm going to sue you for $500,000. Don't think I want to go down that road. So, but again, maybe I'm wrong, and if I am wrong, I'll eat my humble cake. Thanks.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Chestick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We already have a hard enough time in this state recruiting teachers. We need more teachers, and it's not easy to do. A lot of things we've done to this bill, the bill itself, but also the amendments we just passed have put a lot more burden on the teachers. This particular amendment is probably the worst of them. Now, if the teacher doesn't do these new tasks that we've just added to their job list, they can be sued for that. This is going to make it impossible for us to recruit teachers in this school. I urge a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Penn for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've had conversations already in the past couple of weeks about what it takes for a family to sue a school district. This isn't something that somebody's going to sue over a bloody nose. This offers opportunity for parents to have some redress if there are infractions that are serious. It also puts our school districts and employees on notice to say, hey, we're serious about these things. This is something that you need to be very vigilant about and paying attention. So I would ask for an aye vote.
Representative Rodriguez-Williams for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment. Ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to deem parental rights in education as constitutional, as defined by the Supreme Court, as the sponsor of the bill mentioned, the state of Wyoming, the state should act like it. Let's put some teeth in the bill.
Anybody else for their first time? Let's see, Representative Harrelson, you're the sponsor, so. Anybody for their second time? Representative Stiff.
Mr. Speaker, just to be clear for everybody of, what's the situation if this is not in the bill and what if it is in the bill? So if you defeat this amendment, you can still sue the school district if they violate your parental rights. You can still do that. It's just what you're asking for is an injunction. That is a court order telling the school district, don't violate this parent's parental rights. You can still go to court without this amendment. I think that's the preferred scenario. With this amendment, we have the government loses its immunity, and you have people at the bargaining table, shaking down the school district for money. And so I think that would be undesirable. So please vote no.
Anybody else for their second time before the sponsor? Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One other thing that I'm curious on, and if the sponsor of this amendment can bring this up. I've expressed some serious concerns over this, and I think we're all aware. We have teachers and nurses and everybody else that are watching this just as much as the parents are, right? This is not just about the parents. It's about the people that do this for the daily life, and we stand up and we clap when we bring them in here and we show everybody around and we say, hey, look, thanks for all they do, and this is all good. My question on this is, does this, theoretically, the way I read this is file a civil action. Does this potentially open up those individuals to civil action as well? And boy, if this is opening up the individual to civil action, not just the district, I certainly can't support this bill when we're talking about opening up those types of floodgates. I'm trying to really, really do what we were trying to do in the interim, which was define what parental rights are, codify them, make them be what the Supreme Court has said they were, and now we're taking it a bridge, maybe a step too far.
Anybody else for their second time? Representative Chestick for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In response to the question just asked, yes, this bill does put teachers at risk of being sued. On line 15 of the amendment, a government entity and its public employees, the teachers, are now being pulled out of the immunity. And yes, this does open up the opportunity to sue teachers.
Anybody else for their second time? Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thought everyone was looking tired, so I thought I'd bring this and wake everyone up. So, no, just to kind of go and answer a couple of those questions, 21-3-125 is the statute we're actually currently building. So it's a reference back to what we're working on. So damages, the actual damages, so an example, in another state, there was a child that had a chest binder that was given and placed upon that child, and it caused physical damage that needed medical attention. So that is a classic example of a situation where this isn't just a mental issue. This just is, that was a physical damage that was caused. A parent should have the right to recoup these costs. You guys, at the end of the day, the fundamental rights are fundamental rights. And if those are breached with our children, then parents need to have recourse. This is already in law. This is already an option This just codifies it in that gives them the option for civil, and I ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 6 to Senate File 9 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 6 has failed. I think. Senate File 9, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Turver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers? Nicholas, can you repeat? Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Henderson? Aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote? Vote closed. 55 aye, 7 no.
Senate File 9, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 9 has passed the House. Chief, do we have any, busy work, okay, why don't we do those? Reports from standing committees?
Senate File 14, sponsored by Agriculture. State Fair Board Powers and Responsibilities, an act relating to agriculture. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 14 engrossed. State Fair Board Powers and Responsibilities, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Alleman, Allred, Banks, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Representative Eklund, Chairman. Senate File 83, sponsored by Management Council. Revisers Bill, an act relating to the revision of statutes and other legislative enactments. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 83 engrossed, and Revisers Bill, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Alleman, Allred, Banks, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Noes, Representative Conrad. Representative Eklund, Chairman. Senate File 103, sponsored by Senator Salazar, Wyoming Prime Act, an act relating to marketing homemade goods. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 103, Wyoming Prime Act, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Alleman, Allred, Banks, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Representative Eklund, Chairman.
We're at that order of business of signing of enrolled acts. First enrolled act for our consideration is Enrolled Act number 4, Senate Enrolled Act number 4, being original Senate File 3.
Senate Enrolled Act 4, being original Senate File 3, an act relating to the administration of government, providing state employees leave to serve as volunteer emergency response personnel, requiring rulemaking, and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 4, being original Senate File 3. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 5, being original Senate File 30.
Senate Enrolled Act 5, being original Senate File 30, an act relating to crimes and offenses, clarifying that judges are covered under the offense of influencing, intimidating, or impeding jurors, witnesses, and officers, amending the penalty for intimidating or impeding jurors, judges, witnesses, and officers, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 5, being original Senate File number 30. I have so signed. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the, excuse me, the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Welcome, Chairman Bear.
Committee of the whole, please come to order. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 7.
Senate File 7, sponsored by Labor, Behavioral Health Redesign, Vulnerable Adults, an act relating to public health and safety. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred Senate File 7, Behavioral Health Redesign, Vulnerable Adults. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Clouston, O'Hearn, Trujillo, Yin, Zwanitzer. Noes, Representatives Hornock, Penn, Ward. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the first reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Zwanitzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move in the committee of the whole rise to report to do so the recommendation that Senate File 7 do pass. I would further move the standing committee amendment. Ladies and gentlemen, this is on the behavioral health redesign that's initiating again this July, and I know we've talked about it a lot on this floor. It's been a 3-year process, and basically in the legislature 2 terms ago, we initiated kind of a broad vision and goal to reduce costs and increase efficiency on, roughly $100 million of state general funds that we utilize to support behavioral health centers, the state hospital, and to try to find efficiencies in this whole process. So as we've been working on this for 3 years, and we're finally at the point of initiation this summer, we do have 2 what we'll call tweaks to what we put in place. What this does in this bill, and we'll have another one later today, hopefully, in Senate File 7, is on a definition of what it means to be an adult with severe mental illness. So the status quo, to jump back quickly, we're basically holding the status quo in place that we've held for 50 years with this amendment to give the department a year and a half to make sure that everything works the way we believe it's going to work. And so by including for this kind of 2-year window, the definition that all vulnerable adults can be defined for this small 2-year period as an adult with severe mental illness, it allows our constituents who have what we call low acuity behavioral health needs to continue to access the basic level of services provided by your local behavioral health center without being turned away, quite honestly. As we've talked about earlier on this floor, under the redesign on trying to find efficiencies, we leave this gap on the lowest level of people who are coming in for what we call low acuity. So they're feeling depressed, they want someone to talk to. Without this change, we're leaving, a portion, maybe 1,000 or 1,500 people with really, I shouldn't say nowhere to go, but limited options for charity care or being pushed onto a nonprofit or to the emergency room. And so we're really just kind of tweaking a definition for 2 years to initiate the program, make sure everything works like we believe it to work, and then this will expire, as you see, by June 30th, 2026. That legislature will come and make some probably serious determinations of how to proceed with the program, depending on if we have enough cost savings to justify implementing certain programs. It gets much more confusing than that, and I'm happy to talk more about it, but otherwise I'd be happy to answer basic questions and encourage your aye vote.
You've heard the motion on the standing committee. Amendment number 1, is there any discussion on the amendment? Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is kind of a small little change, but I think the ramifications are a little bigger than, and as such, I think we need to talk about them just a little bit more. We're adding the definition of a vulnerable adult, which I'll read in a minute, to what we would term an adult with severe mental illness. Severe mental illness. So to the person we characterize as someone with severe mental illness, we're also adding a person who is 18 years of age or older, who is unable to manage and take care of himself or his money, assets, or property without assistance as a result of advanced age or physical or mental disability. So I'm going to say that we are broadening that definition of who has a severe mental illness a whole lot more than I think we should. This, and we heard in committee testimony that this could include, your grandpa who can't really write a check anymore type of thing. So I just want to be very, very careful about what we're doing here in this definition. We're saying that grandpa basically has severe mental illness, and we're going to lump them into the category of our behavioral health redesign. If you notice in the bill 35-116 in the definitions, there's an A and it says as used in this act, and then we get down and it's already at XB. So there's a lot of definitions that we skip that aren't a part of this piece of paper right here before you, but are a part of how we define those in need of the behavioral health redesign program. And I think those are great definitions. Those are all fine. What I suggest will typically happen is if we don't pass this bill, somebody with who meets some type of a definition of vulnerable adult, who is older, who can't handle money, they probably will fall into another definition already in place in our behavioral health redesign system. So I think we're going a little bit too broad when we bring in the definition of an adult with severe mental illness and correlate any vulnerable adult, anybody we can classify as that vulnerable adult, to be involved in this program. So anyway, just a bit of history. I'd like for you to kind of really think about that, but I urge that we're going a bit too far. We're stepping a bit too far afield on this one, and urge a no vote on the bill. Thank you.
Representative Larson.
Understandably, as we have this conversation, it's easy to get what we've done with the behavioral health redesign mixed up. And as I listened to the comments thus far, I think that perhaps hopefully I can clarify things just a little bit. And that's necessary because this bill is dealing with some work that we've done on the Mental Health and Vulnerable Adult Task Force, where we are trying to help the Adult Protective Services, which is in the department that takes care of family services and is charged with Adult Protective Services, to then how do we define what a vulnerable adult is and how do we get them the services throughout the state that perhaps they might need. Boom. So kind of keep that tucked aside there, and how do we get these services to these people? Our community mental health centers, as they function today, are a function of a federal action that took place that was created in the 70s. And the design of that process really was initially that the federal government was going to come in and they was going to help the state and communities, cities and counties would provide some local cost sharing, the state a little bit, and then the feds would put in to provide these provide centers where people could come in and get mental health services, and depending on your ability to pay, there'd be a sliding fee scale. Over the years, of course, the feds didn't participate much. That transitioned away largely from the communities to where the majority of that burden has become a statewide program, where the community mental health centers, which are providers that enter into a contract with the Department of Health, provide mental health services in the community, and then they're reimbursed based on a fee that's established that is similar to what a counselor or a psychiatrist would be providing those fees. The problem and the reason for the behavioral health redesign is mental health services in our state budget there are no Medicaid dollars in that. It's 100% general fund. And as we identify those in our communities, those who are persistently mentally ill coming out of the state hospital or going into the state hospital, trying to divert them away from that, coming out of incarceration with mental or substance abuse, those that are living under the bridge with mental illness. These are the people that and children and families that need help. These are the people that we were seeing needed the help the most, but perhaps in this system was getting the help the least. And so when we created about 4 years ago the subcommittee to deal with the behavioral health redesign, we went to the community mental health providers and we said, okay, if we just had a limited pot of money, who would you serve? And they listed a priority of people, those with acute mental illness, those that are indigent, those that are coming out of the ones that I just identified. And we said, okay, so the redesign was to say, you currently can collect insurance. If they have the ability to pay, have them pay. If you want to bill Medicaid, you can bill Medicaid. But we've been using state general funds to fund all of that. What we are going to do is say, for our general fund dollars on mental health, we're going to create a list of priority populations that the state is going to pay for. We're not going to pay for everybody across the board. And then we went into 2 years of getting the rules and defining and conforming what community mental health centers done with the implementation date of this year.
Representative Larson, could you please stick to the amendment specifically, please?
I am. This is on the amendment. They have to and Mr. Chairman, seriously, if they don't understand what the redesign is and why we're moving a vulnerable adult into this priority population, it makes no sense.
If we're going to describe the bill itself, can we hold that conversation for when we're debating the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, but the bill without the amendment changes drastically, does it not? So what we do is we have the conversation over here that these people who are no longer going to be considered a priority population because of income or whatever are not going to be getting the overall access to the community mental health centers that they have had up to this point. What this amendment does is takes vulnerable adults, which is in the adult protective statutes, brings it over and says for a period of 2 years, it's going to be part of the priority population for vulnerable adults with mental illness until we kind of get some things figured out and allow them to have access to services from the community mental health centers. I don't think it's going a step too far. I think it's just an insurance policy till we kind of get some of these things worked out. And I would encourage an aye vote.
Thank you, Representative Larson. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And perhaps it's a bit my fault, as I knew there were going to be some speakers before I moved the standing committee amendment. And then I know you said we were on the amendment, and I was not. So on the standing committee amendment, we did tighten up that definition a little bit, that just saying by the mere fact of being a certain age or having a mental or physical disability doesn't solely establish that presumption. So if there's no questions on the standing committee amendment, I would ask for your favorable aye vote at this time.
Question being called. Thank you. Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to quick say that I would recommend an aye vote on the amendment as well. It was favorably looked upon by stakeholders on this issue and does just kind of shore up a concern, wanting to make sure that vulnerable adults don't automatically have a possibility of being also considered to have severe mental illness. So please vote aye.
Question having been called, all those in favor of standing committee amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Standing committee amendment number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could, and so there's a whole lot of history, but the simple thing, and it's not the most eloquent you'll see in the bill, these statutes are just on the behavioral health redesign, and so we're not classifying everybody across the state of being old, of having severe mental illness. This is just for the purposes of the behavioral health redesign. We could have put it in 3 or 4 pages of explanation, but it seemed such a small issue to just tweak the definition for 2 years. And so that low-level acuity population is defined as having, quote unquote, a severe mental illness, so they get raised to a higher level of acuity, so they still have services. So I know it probably was not the most eloquent legalese we've ever done, but it really is a definitional change that elevates the population to continue to provide them services just like we have since 1976. So voting aye votes for the status quo while we continue to see how much money we can save as the redesign kicks off.
Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the amendment helps, but I think we're still going a little far afield, so I urge no. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Question having been called. All those in favor of Chairman Swanitzer's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation of House Bill Senate File number 7 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate File number 7 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for your consideration is Senate File 22. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 22, sponsored by corporations, Public Service Commission, Electricity Reliability, an act relating to public utilities. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 22 engrossed, Public Service Commission, Electricity Reliability, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley. Noes, Representative Yen. Representative Olson, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 22 do pass. And I will turn the explanation of the bill over to the good member from where the water is sweet.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Olson. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this is another product of the culmination of the good work we did in corporations over the summer. And essentially what this bill does is it doesn't allow us to put too many eggs in one basket. It relates to reliability and how the power on the grid must sustain a certain amount of reliability. Do you ask, is this pertaining to the power outage we had last year in this House? No. Stuff like that happens. That's understandable. What this pertains to is the requirements that you have to have with dispatchable power. Power needs to be able to stay on, and the reliability part has to be there. If it goes out, vital things can fail, and then people get in real trouble. So what this does is it essentially is helping our public utilities make better decisions and not invest too heavily one way or another with dispatchable power. It does have a penalty section to it, and it basically reads $100,000 for each day, and then it won't go above $1 million if they are in violation of this bill. So a good little bill, Senate file. I do request for you guys to have a favorable consideration.
Thank you, Representative Wiley. Chairman Olson, do you have a standing committee amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a committee of the whole amendment. And I will move committee of the whole amendment number 1 to Senate File 22 and ask for your favorable consideration. A few years ago, this body had dealt with legislation that allowed for tariffs under certain circumstances to try and bring in some larger projects to Wyoming. And this language that we're inserting right here, we want to make sure that we have some language in the bill that makes it clear that those utilities can still engage in that tariff-making process. So we insert subsection F that just says that nothing in this chapter shall prevent a public utility from entering into energy contracts or arrangements with commercial or industrial customers to procure energy or capacity to meet customers' needs, or, and this is the tariff part, from utilizing customer-specific energy portfolios pursuant to tariffs approved by the commission. So I will take any questions on the amendment. Otherwise, I would ask for your aye vote.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing you're ready for the question having been called, all those in favor of committee of the whole amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Committee of the whole amendment number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Question having been, Representative Chestic, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question about the bill. I'm not sure what the definition of dischargeable, I've lost track of my bill here. Dispatchable power, and what that means. I guess my question is this bill designed to restrain investment in solar energy? Because does solar energy qualify as reliable dispatchable power? If it does not, does this bill create a disincentive to invest in solar energy?
Representative Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to the good bringer that resides in the town that I was educated for my upper education. So when we talk about dispatchables, if you're asking if this affects renewables, then yes, absolutely. And what this is doing is just giving some kind of a mechanism for the utilities to understand that maybe we have a more rounded portfolio of energy here. So we don't get too heavily into one thing and have failures and stuff. The reliability aspect of this is really crucial.
Representative Chestic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Wiley, Byron. Excuse me. Anyway, so now my concern is why is this a problem? Why is there we're telling the utilities what to do. Are we not trusting the utilities to provide reliable energy? And what problem is this solving?
Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a couple of things to hopefully help clarify and clear up some things for the good representative from over the hill. First of all, to the statement that we're telling utilities what to do, yeah, we are, because in Wyoming, utilities are regulated. So it's a regulated utility system. So we absolutely do have the authority to tell the utilities what they can and can't have in their portfolio, which is the genesis of the bill, is to make sure that power is reliable, it's adequate, it's safe, and it's provided to customers at its lowest possible cost. The other thing I want to say for the body is there are two things that are already occurring in this bill. One is, this is already the practice of a lot of utility companies in Wyoming. A particular utility company that we might be trying to hone in on, it might not be their practice, but it is the practice of the majority of utility companies in Wyoming to provide reliable power. Second is, this is already the process that the commission that oversees our public utilities engages in, that already engage in an analysis when they are considering rates and rate cases, et cetera. They engage in an analysis to determine whether the power is reliable and adequate. It's already part of their analysis. So what this bill is really doing with those two pieces of information is it's codifying existing practice in the law. So hopefully that helps the body.
Representative Wiley. Representative Chestic, no. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. Question having been called. All those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Committee of the Whole number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Are there any questions on the bill? Question having been called. All those in favor of Chairman Olson's motion that the Committee of the Whole rises and report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File number 22 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Senate File number 22 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next, we have some privileges. Representative Sherwood.
Privilege of the floor, Mr. Chairman. Today, I would like to introduce you to our 5th, 6th, and 7th graders who are here from the Laramie Christian Academy with their teacher, Holly McCamey. Welcome.
Well, welcome Laramie Christian Academy to the House. Privilege of the floor, Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Privilege of the floor.
Go ahead.
All right, so I'm not sure where she's at, but up in the gallery we have Heather Hager. She's from Sweetwater County. She's with Classical Conversations Homeschool Director, Rock Springs, Wyoming. Please say welcome to her. Thank you.
Welcome to the House. Let's see. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 32. Reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 32, sponsored by Judiciary. Hemp, limitations on psychoactive substances. An act relating to hemp production and controlled substances. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate File 32, Hemp, limitation on psychoactive substances, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Crago, Haroldson, Jennings, Oakley, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Noes, Representatives Nemec, Provenza. Representative Washit, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Washit?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, to do so with the recommendation that Senate File 32 do pass, and I turn over explanation of the bill to the good representative from District 50.
Vice Chairman Rodriguez-Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the body, I bring to you Senate File 32 and ask for your favorable consideration. A little bit of history. In 2018, the Farm Bill, more formally known as the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, legalized the growth and cultivation of cannabis plants that contain less than 0.3% THC, which are legally defined as hemp. This bill prohibits synthetic substances or other additives to be added to legal hemp and prohibits the sale of hemp with THC or psychoactive substances. This bill also prohibits the sale of Delta-8 cannabinol by including it within the list of Schedule I substances within Title 35.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Question having been called. All those in favor? Representative Nemec.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've kicked this around quite a bit, and I urge a no vote on this. In my own community, I have 3 small businesses that sell this product, a federally legal product. And this is just going to be such a hit to those small businesses throughout the entire state. You probably have a business in your own hometown that sells this, probably more than one. So I just urge you to no vote on this, please.
Representative Chestick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I admit I've gone back and forth on this bill quite a bit. We had it during the interim committee. I voted yes then, because, although with some reservations about it, because I'm still not quite sure what it does or why it's necessary. I voted yes again in committee, but as it's currently drafted, I think I'm a no vote at this point. The reason for that is I'm not really sure what problem this is trying to solve. We heard during the interim, we also heard from a group of young lobbyists from the northwest corner of the state earlier in the session that the Delta-8 product is circulating in schools. And that's a problem. I agree that that's a problem that we ought to solve. I don't think that this bill does solve that, or it solves it in a way that's overly broad. What it does is, rather than prohibit this product in getting into the hands of minors, it prohibits everybody from getting it, and that goes too far. I've heard a lot of testimony and getting a lot of emails from disabled veterans and other people with PTSD and other conditions that this product helps them with. And it's actually, we've heard some testimony that it's a better solution than medical marijuana, which they can get legally in Colorado. This is a product that they think works better and is available locally and produced locally. So I do not want to make that product unavailable to adults who are using it for therapeutic reasons. And I do know that a lot of the dispensaries that are the companies that manufacture and dispense this, they agree that this is an adults-only product. And the responsible companies are not allowing it into the hands of minors, but it does get into the hands of minors. So I've been thinking about how might I be able to amend this bill. I'm not sure it's possible because the amendment that I would like to see might change the intent of the bill. I would like to see some way of regulating this to that, along the lines of what we do with alcohol, where alcohol is not available to minors, but it is available for adults. But even then, alcohol gets in the hands of minors too, so I'm not even sure how effective my amendment would actually be. So at this point, unless there are some amendments or somebody can find a way to protect youth but not harm adults who use this product legally and for good effect, I'm going to, at this point, urge a no vote.
Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would urge a no vote on this bill. Right now, there is an established market for the people that use this product. They use it responsibly, and by criminalizing specifically Delta 8, this established market would then go either to the black market, which certainly exists in the state of Wyoming, or they would move to, or they would take their business to states that have legalized similar products. So essentially, we're either giving a paycheck to your local drug dealers or paying for out-of-state resources. And I don't think this is an effective way to solve this problem. If we make this a criminal product, instead of going to a head shop where people would be required to use or show an ID in order to get this product, instead these folks who have already established that they want this product would go to a local drug dealer who does not care at all about how old you are. They just care about selling this product, which in addition to having Delta 8 is about as one-third as potent as Delta 9 THC. And so just like in the prohibition of alcohol, by prohibiting alcohol, we instead saw the increased use of more intense alcohol as compared to beer And so I think the unintended consequences of this bill we will see more harm and a promotion of the black market. And so I would urge a no vote.
Chairman Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So those of us who were around back when this hemp bill was first passed and approved by this body, remember the information that we were given. We were told that what we were authorizing was non-psychoactive hemp. And the purpose was to empower our agricultural community to have another cash crop that could be produced well in Wyoming. We were told that crop would be used for textiles, that crop would be used for soap additives. We were told that it could create CBD creams and ointments. And it was all about being this low threshold of THC content, and that you would have to smoke a boatload of this stuff to get high. That's how we were persuaded to vote for the changes in our statutes. And what did we get? We get Delta 8, we get Delta 10, we get this variety of products that are in fact psychoactive. We were misled, and now we have to fix that. The best way to fix it is to ban it, and then we can start a conversation fresh with this industry about what products might be sold under what conditions in our state. The industry did this to themselves, and these products are showing up in our schools. Your school resource officers can tell you about children showing up who are so impaired they're unable to function at school. And what have they been using? Delta 8. Go to the websites. Look under the federal agency that deals with groceries and medicines, and you'll see a whole warning list about Delta 8 products. You go to that web-based doctor and look up Delta 8, and you'll see a buyer beware that suggests that Delta 8 might be the Russian roulette of cannabis. The proliferation of these businesses across Wyoming have caught the attention of our constituents. And I've heard from many of them saying, I didn't think Wyoming had legalized this. Why do I have all these stores with a big green leaf on it in my community? We heard lots of testimony about the contaminants and problems associated with Delta 8. Delta 8 in its natural state occurs in very trace amounts in hemp. In order to make it commercially profitable, these are all synthesized, manufactured chemical products that are being added. And that groceries and medicine group doesn't regulate these things at all. Okay, there's no inspection, there's no verification. So we're just selling all sorts of products in our state right now with no verification of what it is. We were led down a rosy path thinking we were helping farmers, and this is where we ended up. I encourage an aye vote.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I greatly appreciate the previous speaker's comments. I also have received lots of emails and contact about this subject, and I'm curious why, maybe someone can help me, why is it not possible to produce hemp with lower than 0.3% THC? I don't understand why that's not possible.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What you're about to hear is anecdotal, but I believe it represents probably a substantial number of adults. It was mentioned earlier, you know, keep this from the kids, but maybe the adults should have it there. A member of my family had a history of drug addiction, ultimately ended up in prison, was released, was on parole for some period of time, got off of parole, had his life pretty well back together, working productively in a job. Got feeling pretty good one day and decided I'll try a little of this stuff. Within 2 weeks, he was right back where he started, quit his job, re-addicted to drugs. The list goes on. It's a slippery slope, and I personally, this is an aye for me.
Vice Chair Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I wanted, I guess I'll start with answering a question if I understood it correctly. Certainly hemp is being produced and used for all the products that was discussed by the good chairman, and that is for, you know, rope and candles, different things like that. That industry's fine, and we're not changing. We're not asking for any change to that. What this is they're taking hemp, and as was discussed by the good chairman, and doing a synthetic process to make it so that it is a psychoactive drug. So when, like, somebody asks, like, what are we doing here? I mean, we're prohibiting a loophole from being exploited that it creates THC, which is legal in Wyoming, to, you know, from having it, a drug through a loophole be sold that is absolutely sold to get people high. That's, people can use it, and we heard a lot about, you know, the people it helps, and I'm not unsympathetic to that, but the reality is it's because they're using it as a medical product. And so again, for its psychoactive processes, which in every other realm, we have the medical industry regulate. This is not regulated. We can't regulate it because it's not legal, so you don't know the numbers. The director of the Center for the Study of Cannabis, so the academics that even study THC and marijuana for a living, said that this is dangerous. They said, she said, I have great fear of legalizing something that we know very little about, because they said we know very little about Delta 8. It hasn't been studied. It's not regulated. This was, like, exactly as the chairman said, this was a loophole through a product that we wanted to have legal for all sorts of reasons, hemp, being synthetically manufactured to be a psychoactive drug. That's what this is. And I believe that the policy of the state of Wyoming is that, I mean, we don't have THC as legal. Marijuana is not legal. So the idea of a loophole of a synthetically created one doesn't make any sense. I think, I'd urge an aye vote on the bill.
Representative Chestic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to briefly address the comments a few speakers ago from the representative with a similar first name. By the same logic, yes, people do have drug addiction problems and they try and get clean and they go back to it. That happens, yes. By that same logic, we should ban alcohol, because my father was an alcoholic. I grew up in an alcoholic family. I know how that works. They fall off the wagon a lot. So by that logic, we should ban alcohol. We actually tried that once, back in the 20s, and look how that worked out.
Majority Floor Leader Nyman. Is there any further discussion on the bill? Vice Chair Rodriguez-Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I urge an aye vote on SF 32. Just to address some of the comments that have been made that weren't addressed by previous speakers, I would argue that public safety outweighs the success of very few private businesses that exist within our state. Furthermore, this market targets youth to create lifelong users. We did hear from the state personnel that oversee laboratory services in the state, and they felt that this makes the law clearer for them when they're doing their job. We also heard from the department that oversees ag, and they felt that this bill does not change their program. And their role is really to regulate the raw product from grow to processing. And so our committee saw a lot of support for this bill, and I urge an aye vote.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Washet's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 32 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? Senate File 32 has passed Committee of the Whole. Majority Floor Leader Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the House stand in recess until 2:35. Oh, we can't come back in? Oh, rise and report, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I move the House rise and report, Committee of the Whole rise and report. Get this all done. We don't do this often. But I'd move that the House begs leave to rise again at 2:35.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. You want it? Okay.
Committee announcements, and we have, committee announcements, Chairman Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, will meet now in room 5. We'll take up 5 bills. Senate File 125, Parimutuel Wagering Activities Amendments. Senate File 118, Bighorn and Domestic Sheep Relocation, Federal Action. Senate File 109, Prohibit Red Flag Gun Seizure Act. Senate File 111, these two are if we have time. Senate File 111, Mule and Whitetail Deer Separate Hunting Seasons. And Senate File 72, Utility Donations. So my committee, get up, get out, get down there, because we have lots to do today.
Representative Larson, JT, do you have a quick privilege?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor.
Please go ahead.
Okay, up in our north gallery, we have Chair of the Sweetwater County School District 1 Trustees Carol Jellicoe and trustee Stephanie Thompson up in the North Gallery.
Hey, hey. Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 9 will meet tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in room 5 to consider 2 bills, Senate File 41 and Senate File 42.
Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4, Education, will meet tomorrow upon noon recess after we grab a bite to eat. We're going to hear 3, or we'll work on 3, Senate File 19, Developmental Preschool Funding, Senate File 82, Summer School Preservation Act, and Senate File 86, School Safety and Security Funding as time permits.
Chairman Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 1, Judiciary, will meet at 7:30 tomorrow morning. Slight change to our lineup. We're going to hear 4 bills, Senate File 36, Senate File 53, Senate File 73, and Senate File 123.
All right, Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Joint Conference Committee on the Senate File 1, House Bill 1 will meet at 12:30. Your House Appropriations will meet on adjournment to hear Senate File 90, Senate File 64. And then tomorrow at noon, we will hear Senate File Joint Resolution 2, Senate File 77, and one more.
IB 102.
Senate File 102.
All right, any others? All right, we stand at recess until 2:30. 2:35.